Okay, good afternoon. I'm calling the regular monthly meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission to order for Wednesday, April 23rd, 2014. Would you all rise for the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McGill, would you call roll, please?
Chair Wiscombe.
Here.
Eaton. Here. Longstreet.
Here.
Uribe. Here. Intern Rodriguez.
Here.
Case Spear and Farrar are not present.
Thank you. We'll try to not call on you. I didn't realize you were. Hope you're all right. Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Ms. Rapp? Okay, great. And written communications, none. Anyone here for public comment on an item that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing no one, we will close public comment and move on to community service recognition. And Mr. Hanna's here, welcome. And this is the recognition of Presidio Sports.
Good afternoon, Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners. It's always nice to be back at Commission. And tonight I'm excited to be here to recognize Presidio Sports and their partnership with the Santa Barbara Brewing Company for providing financial support to our junior lifeguard program. Almost every year I have this opportunity to come to Commission and talk about program growth and monies that are given to the program for additional equipment, but rarely I speak to the need for our junior lifeguard scholarships. For a program that consists of 335 participants, we award 15 scholarships per year. Many of our summer camp scholarships are fundraised through the Park Foundation events, such as the upcoming Magic on the Urban Wine Trail event this Sunday, which if you're watching at home, I guess there's still some spaces available. However, the funded scholarships are limited to week-long programs only. Fortunately, given the size for the junior lifeguard program, we have the flexibility to add scholarship participants without incurring additional staffing or funding expenses. Presidio Sports is a community sports news and information provider right here in Santa Barbara area. Their mission is to improve the exchange of important information for anyone interested in Santa Barbara sports while making an extra effort to recognize those who are making positive contributions in the community through athletics, a perfect combination for their partnership with the Santa Barbara Junior Lifeguard Program. Each year during the NFL season, Presidio Sports partners with the Santa Barbara Brewing Company to conduct a local celebrity pick'em bracket. Consistent with their philosophy of supporting community sports, there's nothing on the line but local bragging rights. This year, Todd Rogers, Olympic gold medalist who participated in our beach volleyball programs, was one of the local celebrities, as was Lakey Peterson, who is representing or is participating in the U.S. Open Professional Surfing Championships. The result of this year's NFL Pick'em bracket is the donation of 2 fully funded scholarships for our very own junior lifeguard program. So tonight, it's with great gratitude that we recognize Presidio Sports. John Dvorak, who's the CEO, is here tonight, and the Santa Barbara Brewing Company for their incredible support of important local youth aquatic programming. So with that, I'll ask John to come forward.
Welcome. On behalf of the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Parks and Recreation Department, I'd like to give you this certificate of appreciation. The Junior Lifeguard Program is regionally recognized as an outstanding program, and that couldn't happen without Presidio Sports and the things that you do for the community, and we really and truly appreciate it. Thank you so much for everything you do for the program. And would you like to say a few words?
Sure, I'll say something right quick. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for having us and recognizing this really awesome effort. It's been a great pleasure to be able to give back to the community. And really, Presidio Sports can't really take any credit for the Junior Lifeguards program. It's been going on for decades and decades. And because of its high regard in the community, it's one of the reasons that we chose to support it. So again, just like to thank everybody for having us and the recognition, and it's even greater to be able to give back. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Before we continue to the next one, I just failed to recognize, and I want to recognize Commissioner Sheila Lodge, who is here. Commissioner Lodge is our liaison with the Planning Commission, so I'd like to give her a big welcome. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have another outstanding recognition, and we have Mr. Jason Bryan here, and this is recognition of the key volunteers from the Santa Barbara Lawns Bowl Club.
Chair Wiscom and Commissioners, it's a pleasure being here today to recognize the outstanding contribution of members of the Santa Barbara Lawn Bowls Club. This is the Lawn Bowls Club located in Spencer Adams Park that's been in operation since 1937, operating year-round recreation programs. This is one of two local clubs that provides opportunity for members to come together in a spirit of camaraderie while supporting the game of bowls. The Santa Barbara Lawn Bowls Club is administered by volunteers who oversee virtually all aspects of the club's operation and maintenance. While every member volunteers in some way, there are 5 individuals this evening that have been instrumental in bringing life and vitality to the club that we'd like to give special recognition to. Dale Jackson has been the designated lawn keeper and has achieved the best green conditions seen in many years. Lucille Jackson is an outstanding administrator, photographer, and the author of a beautiful 75-year history documentation of the past activities of the Santa Barbara Lawn Bowls Club. We have 3 other members that we're recognizing this evening. Carol Smith, who is a former Parks and Recreation supervisor who has been a member of the Santa Barbara Lawn Bowls Club since 1970. That means you started when you were 5, I believe. We also have Jess Jessam and Lee Smeeds. And these are individuals who have served many different capacities over their years with the Lawn Bowls Club and have been recognized by their fellow lawn bowlers, and it's a privilege to recognize them here this evening. I'd like to invite the current club president, Tony Cunningham, to say just a few words and make a quick, brief announcement about an upcoming event at the club. And Tony, would you please approach the podium?
Welcome, Mr. Cunningham.
Thank you very much. As Jason just said, we've been in existence for 77 years, and Carol has been a member of the club for 44 of those years. Really, I don't think there's anybody else around that could match that record anywhere on any club. The members who have been nominated tonight or today are just a few of the volunteers, but they're the cream of the crop. They have put in many hours on their own. They come down when the club is closed, maintain the rose garden, our succulent garden, the lawn, and anything else that has to be done. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce our members.
Thank you very much. It's great to see all of you here. Volunteerism is one of the things that really keeps our community strong and keeps our community together. And it's great to see you all have different responsibilities at the club, and you obviously do them all well. It looks great, it operates well, and you're to be commended for your volunteer hours that you've put in and your hard work. And I thank you all. If you'd come forward, Dale Jackson. On behalf of the Parks and Recreation Commission and Department, I'd like to present you with this certificate of appreciation. Thank you so much for all you do. And Lucille Jackson? Are you two related? Husband and wife?
We're all 65 years.
Or is he your dad? No. I always do that with my husband. So. On behalf of the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Parks and Recreation Department, I'd like to present you with this certificate and thank you for your service. Thank you so much. Yeah. And Carol Smith. Still working for Parks and Rec, huh? After.
Never went away.
On behalf of the Parks and Rec Commission and the Parks and Recreation Department, I'd like to present you with this certificate for community service recognition. Thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you for 40 years of playing.
And Jess Jessam? On behalf of the Parks and Recreation Commission and Department, I'd like to present you with this certificate for recognition, community service. Thank you so much for all you do.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
These pictures here are all of places in our club.
Great.
Pictures in the club, right.
That's great. And Lee Schmetties? What? Okay. You can correct me when you get to the mic.
Come when somebody sneezes, so you were close.
Is it at you? Okay. On behalf of the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Parks and Recreation Department, I'd like to present you with this community service recognition certificate, and thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you. It's my privilege to be a member of the club. We have a ball.
And thanks to all the other volunteers at the club. It's a remarkable place. I've visited it, and you're all really enthusiastic, and it looks great. So,
May I say one more thing?
yes.
I would like to mention today that on May the 10th this year, we're going to have our open house, our annual open house, and everybody's invited to come see what lawn bowling is all about. It's a great game. As you can see, every one of them. They're all senior citizens. Every one of them. And our club, although it's made up of mostly senior citizens, we have young people come too, and we give them a hard time, our senior citizens. So thank you very much, and you're all welcome on May the 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can vouch for that fun day, that open house, because I was there last year, and it's a fun time. So, Mr. Casebeer, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I might just add that lawn bowling is probably the most affordable form of exercise and certainly camaraderie that we can offer our citizens of Santa Barbara. What are the monthly fees if I become a member, Dale?
It's a yearly fee, but it breaks down to $12 a month.
$12, and I can play as
4 days a week.
4 days a week.
Yes. 2 games a day.
Plenty. So that's
About 11 cents a game.
Thank you, George.
Thank you all again for coming. It's great to see you all here. Okay, we're going to move on to the Youth Council report. Mr. Rodriguez,
Good evening.
welcome.
Yeah, good evening, commissioners. We had our leadership conference, Youth Council had our leadership conference this past Monday, and it was a pretty big success. A lot of people turned out, I think about 100 people, including adults. And then this Tuesday, next Tuesday, I don't know exactly the date. We have a town hall meeting. We're 29th.
Yeah.
We're hosting with Friday Night Live, which will introduce the program they're doing, Trace. So you're all welcome to come out to that.
Okay, that's Tuesday the 29th. Where is it?
4 p.m. at the Davis Center.
4 p.m. at the Davis Center. Okay. Great. Thank you for the report. Okay, we're going to move on to Commissioner Committee Assignment Reports. We just typically go down the roll. Ms. Uribe, I'll start with you. Do you have anything to report?
I attended the meeting with Bibi, but I think she has the report because I had to leave, so I don't know what the conclusion was.
Okay,
But I know.
that's fine. Okay, we'll jump to, Mr. Heaton, did you have something?
Nothing to report
Yeah,
this week.
okay. Ms. Longstreet?
I did attend the NAC meeting, and the committee is still working out some of the issues with the community improvement monies and a program to do small projects in the neighborhoods. One of the issues, of course, is the drought. A lot of the kinds of projects that come up are parkways and things like that, but we have to put on hold any new plantings in the future. So that the group is looking at some other ideas, maybe murals or other ways to enhance the east and the west side neighborhoods. So that was, it's still a lively topic at the NAC. I also attended the Park Foundation meeting, and we will have our fundraiser this Sunday. The proceeds from the fundraiser support scholarships and the Youth Culinary Art Program. The scholarships are for summer camps for all ages, but the Youth Culinary Arts Program provides all of the hors d'oeuvres for the event. So you get to meet the kids that benefit by this program, and it is truly a wonderful program to see in action. And we have 15 wineries now?
I think 13, yeah.
13 wineries and many, many wonderful auction items. And it'll be a fun afternoon. So it's Sunday from 2 to 5 at the Carrillo Ballroom and Recreation Center. So I hope everyone can join us. And tickets can be purchased at the Park Foundation website, or you can call down to the office and someone will help you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Casebeer?
Yes, on Tuesday, along with Ms. Rapp and Mr. Casey and lots of folks, I attended the Youth Council's Leadership Conference, where Andrew was in a position of authority and making sure things were getting taken care of. And I was quite impressed. There were probably 75 participants from the various high schools, from Goleta to Carpinteria. And what was most important to me was that it reflected the student population. There were all ends of the spectrum were represented, and these young people are not afraid to voice their opinions on very important issues that they will be grappling with in the years to come. So I'm very excited about the future for us. In addition to this, I attended the Arts and Crafts monthly meeting, and the major issue that was discussed there is the replacement of the Cabrillo Street Bridge at the intersection of State Street and Cabrillo. And that it's still a ways off. Nothing moves quickly, but we're making plans on how the show will adapt part of the area next to Stearns Wharf over to the creek, and just on the other side of the Mission Creek will be taken up for construction and staging areas. So those artists will be relocated. In addition, we had a lengthy discussion on the new city's website, of which the Arts and Crafts Show has a significant presence, and we're very excited about that. And I did attend yesterday the City Council meeting on the gang injunction. I I'll be honest with you, I was not there pro or con on the gang injunction, but I was there as a citizen. And the most heartening thing as a Parks and Rec commissioner was to hear the importance of our social neighborhood outreach programs, after-school programs, what we're going to do with problems here and now are one thing, but the future we can deal with by investing in elementary and junior high school kids. This is the real opportunity. And that I was really heartened that people on both sides of that issue spoke again and again and again on the importance of investing in our youth. Oh, yeah, and then on Saturday, I was, thank you, we had our 7th annual Parque de los Niños egg hunt. Can't use that other word, egg hunt, and it was tremendous. We had about 150 kids, and along with their parents, it was really nice to see the interaction of mothers, fathers, little ones, big ones, and just with smiles on their faces. Pete Leyva is the driving force of this event, and he did a smash-up job. We hid those plastic eggs with candies inside. In addition, he had 10 tickets inside, and the kids that were lucky enough to get the tickets got a special Easter basket with toys and goodies. So that was very special. I'd just like to just step aside for a moment and recognize one of our own Parks and Rec staff members that completed the Boston Marathon. And she just walked. I'm surprised. How are you walking well, Miss Zachary? Up and downstairs. But we're very, very proud of you representing our great city in that wonderful event. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much for that report. And you had a great time, too. Really great time. So congratulations. Okay. I attended the Chase Palm Park play area. It wasn't a formal ribbon cutting. It was just kind of an opening ceremony. And Mr. Caseberry, you were there too, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at any rate, that was really fun. If you've not been down there to see the improvements made to the play area, it's well worth a trip. It really looks great, and we got very, very positive feedback from a couple families that were down there with their kids. I also attended the City Council meeting, where I'm pleased to say the Urban Forest Management Plan was adopted, and I lobbied for some funding for the plan, and excuse me, Mr. McPherson, who's sitting here from the Street Tree Advisory Committee, was there too to speak on behalf of the plan and funding for the plan. So we'll see what comes from that. Also attended the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting, and we reviewed the trees that are on your agenda tonight, and also with Ms. Longstreet attended the Park Foundation meeting where we're all about the magic on the Urban Wine Trail. We have more tickets for sale, and I think the one thing that you didn't mention is we have 2 strolling magicians this year. So not just 1, but 2. So it's going to be a really great event, and I hope you all can make it. And that wraps up my report. So we'll move on to commission and staff communications. Ms. Rapp?
Just 2 things for commissioners, letting you know that I have asked 2 people to come and make presentations to the commission. I'm anticipating that one will be in the month of May and one in the month of June. I have asked somebody from Public Works Water Resources to come and give a drought update. And so that will likely be in May. And then that will precede us bringing to you our department drought strategy. But that will give you a good update. They are making these presentations to different boards and groups all over town. So I thought it would be a good start. And also, I realize that the department is playing a larger role with the South Coast Gang Task Force. I'm not sure that I had communicated that to you. I was asked to step in and play a larger role with the retirement of Assistant City Administrator Marcelo Lopez, and Mark Alvarado has been involved with the Service Providers Group. So with that, I have asked, actually, Saul Serrano, who is the program coordinator, to come and give an update on that group's efforts, and we'll be talking more about that. So that will likely happen in either May or June. We'll kind of look and see how crowded the agenda is. So those two things. Anything else we're going to cover tonight, so I'm fine.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar. We have the summary of council actions, which are in your packet. I assume no one has any questions on those. Okay, then agenda item number 4 is approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, a special meeting, which was a site visit on March 25th, 2014, which was the Bath Ortega Pocket Park, and also the regular meeting of March 26, 2014. Is there any commissioner that needs these separated for any reason? Okay, well then let's take them together, and
I move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, carries unanimously. Great. Okay, we are excuse me, we're moving on to Street Tree Advisory Committee items, agenda item number 5A1. And I will say any action of the Parks and Recreation Commission made pursuant to the Municipal Code, Chapter 15.24, preservation of trees, may be appealed to the City Council within 10 days. Mr. Downey, welcome.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, before I get to this item, I just want to remind everybody we've got an event this weekend. Earth Day is happening at Alameda Park. Encourage everybody to come down and check out everything everybody has to offer down there. So that being said, 154 Romaine Drive, the tree is on the Baldwin Avenue side of the property. It's a cook pine that has developed 2 heads. The applicant is concerned that due to the lean of the tree, that it might topple over. The pine cones and needles that drop down are a nuisance to bare feet, and the neighbors are concerned about their children walking on those items. They are in the midst of planning a drought-tolerant landscape. They haven't completed that yet. So they're wanting to replace the tree. They're suggesting that they would replace it with Chiananthus, which is a fringe tree. The Street Tree Advisory Committee reviewed the application materials and did a site visit. One thing I'll share, the new commissioners haven't heard about this species yet. This particular species has a natural habit here in Santa Barbara of having a bent trunk and a lean to the south. So it's absolutely normal for this species to do that. There's nothing structurally wrong with that. The committee decided that the tree has some great value to the neighborhood, and they recommend that you deny the request. I do have the chair of the Street Tree Advisory Committee here if you have any questions about the committee's deliberations or discussions about either of the items.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Downey. Do we have any public speakers on this item, or, okay, seeing that, we'll close public comment then, and we'll open it up to the commission for questions and discussion, and if you have questions of Duke McPherson, please feel free to ask them, and he'll come forward, since he's chair of the Street Tree Advisory Committee and was nice enough to attend the meeting. Okay. Anyone? Okay. Do I
I'll
hear?
make a motion.
Fine.
I hereby move to adopt staff's recommendation to deny the removal of the Araucaria columnarius cook pine at 154 Romaine Drive.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, abstentions? No? Okay, fine, that carries unanimously then. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 5B1, which is at 121 Terrace Vista Lane.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, at 121 Terrace Vista Lane, there are several white iron barks. The applicant is requesting to remove the two in this photograph. The committee went to the site and reviewed their concerns. Their concerns are fire safety, safety for the building. They feel they're a little too close to the home. The committee noted that the tree closest to you in the photograph, and also closest to the front door of the property, has at some point had a planter built around it and soil filled in, which has somewhat buried the trunk of the tree. This can cause decay in the trunk of the tree, which can be a safety concern. And it appears as though it's been in that condition for quite some time. The committee determined that because of that condition, it's likely that this tree would have some decay. Their recommendation is to approve the removal of that tree. They looked at the other tree, which the grade has not been changed around, and it is healthy and appropriately maintained. Their recommendation is to deny that removal. So their recommendation is to approve the tree closest to the front door and deny the other one.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Mr. Downey. And we don't have any speakers on this item. Again, Duke McPherson's here if you have questions of staff, and I'll open it up to the commission for questions and discussion. Anyone? Yes, Mr. Heaton.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious. You said that they built there was a planter built around at some point, and Phil added, and that's compromised the tree. Is this typical that? Is there an option to have that fill removed, or is that something that we would address? I mean, is there a responsibility to maintain the health of the tree, I guess is what I'm asking, in the setback in some manner?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Heaton, the lack of knowledge of how long it's been in that condition is of concern. And the proximity to where they enter the home raised the level of it for the committee, and they determined that by giving the partial approval, it would alleviate a lot of the concerns which they recognize are a concern as well, and yet preserve the remaining tree. So it's better to not do that kind of activity at all by piling soil and materials around the tree, but not knowing how long it's occurred and how in-depth the decay might be, the committee was edging on the safe side for this tree.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I
Yes.
would make a motion that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation at 121 Terrace Vista Lane for the removal of one eucalyptus, white ironbark eucalyptus, as stated in the staff recommendation.
Do I hear a second? Okay, seconded by Ms. Uribe. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Downey. Okay, that concludes agenda item number 5. We're moving on to new business agenda item number 6, which is the Parks and Recreation recommended fiscal year 2014-15 budget. Now, this is an action item on our part, so if you've read the staff report, we will have to make a recommendation to City Council on all parts of the budget, which includes the general fund, the Creeks Fund, the Golf Fund, the capital program, and fees and charges. And we can take that all together, or we can take them separately. I think my recommendation is that we take Creeks and perhaps even Golf separately, because they're enterprise funds, and Creeks. Yeah, so, and then maybe we take the other ones together, if that's all right with you, Ms. Rapp.
That would be our recommendation as well. So we're just getting settled, getting our PowerPoint up. As we get into the general fund comes the excitement. This is a great year for Parks and Recreation. But we are very pleased to present to you the budget that was presented to City Council yesterday. And our department will make our budget presentation to City Council on Monday, May 19th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so just a quick overview of the information that you will receive tonight. And we will go into a bit more detail with the commission than typically we do at City Council. You have a greater knowledge of programs and services, and do encourage you as we're going through to go ahead and ask questions as we go through. If we're going to talk about something in particular, we'll let you know, and we'll come back to it later in the presentation. But in the interest of having you be able to understand as we're going through, please don't hesitate to interrupt and ask questions. So the city adopted a 2-year budget last fiscal year. So what we have this year is the second year of that 2-year plan. So the focus will be primarily on adjustments to that plan. So we will not be going through budgets in as much detail, and you noticed from the budget information that was included with your packet, there's a lot less detail than you typically get on the various programs. We will talk about our key initiatives in the different divisions. We will talk about proposed fee changes, which is primarily recreation, and the performance plan. And the order that we will take in the presentation tonight is the Creeks Fund, the Golf Fund, and then the General Fund. And so we do recommend that you take each fund separately. Your recommendations will be to address the operating fund, the capital fund, any fee changes. So those are the 3 that you'll be addressing in your motion, and also including any comments on the budget that you want to go to City Council. So with that, you can see the department is presenting to you a budget of $21.3 million. The majority of that budget is the general fund budget, and smaller but nearly equal is the golf and creek budgets. So with that, I think we'll move on to the Creeks program with Cameron Benson.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Cameron Benson. I'm the Creeks Division Manager, and this afternoon I'll be presenting the proposed fiscal year 2015 budget for the Creeks Division. As you all know, most of the funding for the Creeks Division comes from the voter-approved Measure B, which is a 2% hotel bed tax that is placed into a special fund and restricted to pay for stormwater and surface water quality improvements as well as creek restoration projects. The Creeks Division receives no funding from the city's general fund, and the budget that I'm presenting tonight is consistent with Measure B and with the Creeks Fund funding guidelines. The Creeks Division has three main program areas: water quality improvement, creek restoration, and outreach and education. And this chart breaks down those down the budget expenditures into the three program areas, and then further breaks the program areas down into our capital and operating budgets. And as you can see in FY15, trying to bring up a pointer up here, but it's not, there it is. In FY15, we have a significant amount of funds being recommended for our creek restoration capital program, for creek restoration projects. Those contributions do make a significant impact on our overall, on the percentages of where the money goes in our program areas. In other words, if I removed the capital funding from this chart, you would see that the percentages would change to 49% for water quality, 26% for creek restoration, and 25% for education and outreach. And now getting into our numbers on the expenditure side, there are only a few minor changes from the original FY15 budget that I presented to you all last year. First, our salaries and benefits number changes slightly to reflect an increase in our water quality research coordinator position from a half-time position to a three-quarter-time position. This will allow us to monitor new capital projects as we have new projects going in, and we always have monitoring of those projects as part of our ongoing monitoring programs, and to comply with new monitoring requirements of the statewide Clean Water Act permit. Second, our supplies and services number goes down just by $20,000. The reason for that is that's part of our invasive plant removal program, where we're removing arundo along the creek corridors. And we have been partnering for several years now with the County Agricultural Commissioner's Office on that project. The Agricultural Commissioner's Office received a grant for arundo removal, and so that's bringing our costs down for that program. And then third, our transfers out of our operating budget have decreased almost $90,000. That's all attributed to a reduction in the Measure B contribution to the city's street sweeping program. And that involves some changes to that program and also some changes in the formula of how the Measure B contribution to the program is arrived at. And then lastly, I just want to point out our transfers projected for FY14 is very large compared to our original FY15 and our proposed FY15 numbers. And the reason for that large amount in FY14 is that we had a property acquisition where we bought 14.5 acres of land up in the upper Arroyo Burro watershed in the past year. So we transferred some funds from reserve to cover the cost of that acquisition. So again, the most significant changes in our proposed FY15 budget as compared to FY14 are a decrease in the capital program transfer, a decrease in the street sweeping program transfer, and then the increase of 1/4 time in our water quality research coordinator position. On the revenue side, the city's finance department has revised its FY15 TOT projections upward roughly $100,000 from their original projection. Our other revenues are projected to remain the same, and so our total revenues are expected to be just over $3.6 million. As we have in past years, we will be using a little over $200,000, $220,000 from our reserves in order to balance our budget this year and to essentially pay for the large capital program that we have in place. At the end of FY15, we're projecting a reserve balance of $2.7 million, and that balance could increase if we are successful with some grant applications we have pending or that we're working on, or through other program efficiencies through the year. This is a table identifying the capital improvement program and projects that the Creeks Advisory Committee reviewed and recommended at our November 2013 meeting. All of the projects that the committee supported are included in our proposed budget, and I'd like to highlight just a few of these. Up at the top, the Las Positas Valley Restoration Project. That's a project we're working on in a creek that's a tributary to Arroyo Burro. It runs right along Las Positas Road, and you see it because it's a concrete channel in one section, and we're trying to look at whether there are opportunities to remove that concrete channel and do a creek restoration project there. We're currently in a technical feasibility study and neighborhood outreach phase of that project. Second on the list is the stormwater treatment retrofit project. These are intended to provide examples of infrastructure designs that will reduce water pollution in some difficult areas in the city, such as parking lots and roads and sidewalks. As you know, we replaced a lot of asphalt in some of the parks in the city and replaced it with permeable pavers. We are now looking to replace some of the asphalt and concrete in streets and in alleyways and sidewalks in the city as an additional demonstration project. And then third, I mentioned earlier, the Creeks Division acquired a property just outside the city limits near Foothill Road in the Upper Arroyo Burro watershed, and we have a project number 4 on the list here, the Upper Arroyo Burro Watershed Restoration Project, and that is Barger Creek, which is one of the larger tributaries to Arroyo Burro, and we have a large section of that creek now to do available to us to do a restoration project. This is a graph showing our capital program funding sources over the past several years, and this slide is important to not only show our grant successes, but also to show that there can be gaps in our grant funding. And where you see we have some years where we have almost $4 million in grant revenue coming in FY14. It's barely enough to shade the top of that bar, and we have a $10,000 grant that we received. We do have, as I mentioned, pending grants right now, and we have one for our streets, sidewalks, and alleys project. That's a $2.3 million grant. We expect to hear next month whether we're successful with that, but even if we do hear about it next month, it takes a little while to get to council and execute grant agreements, and so that funding would be booked in the next fiscal year, not in this one. In addition, even though this year it's really just a matter of what grants are available and then what matches up with where we are and the status of our projects going forward. So just to let you know, we are continually and actively looking for what grants are available and trying to leverage the Measure B funds as best we can to get the biggest bang out of those dollars for the community. And again, since the start of the program, we've received nearly $15 million in grant funds. So some of our key efforts in the coming year include completing our design and construction specifications for our streets, sidewalks, and alleys stormwater treatment project. It includes designing a restoration project along Barger Creek in the Arroyo Burro watershed, designing a restoration project on Las Positas Creek, and then completing our conceptual designs for our Mission Laguna Creek restoration project. When we have those complete, we will be bringing them to the Commission to review and comment on. And then lastly, I wanted to let you all know that the Creeks Advisory Committee will hear this budget presentation this evening, and I will forward their recommendation to you as soon as I have one. I can let you know that the Creek Advisory Committee Budget Subcommittee did have a meeting where we went over the budget in line-by-line detail on March 17th, and there was a general consensus of support for the proposed budget. And so with that, I'll conclude my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. Okay, we don't have any public comment on the Creeks budget, so I'm just going to open it up to the commission for questions and discussion. Does anyone want to start? Ms. Longstreet?
The piece of property that you bought up on Las Positas or Barger Creek, does that need to be annexed into the city, or you said it was not part of the city?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Longstreet, the property is in the county. It does join right up to the edge of the city. It doesn't need to be annexed for us going forward, but that's something we're going to take a look at as we go forward and see if there are reasons that would make sense to annex it to the city.
Okay, thank you.
Any other Mr. Casebeer?
Just out of curiosity, Mr. Benson, why would we restore a creek way up in the foothills? What benefits does that bring to the overall picture?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Casebeer, the reason for that is the creeks are all connected to each other. So where that creek touches the city is right at Foothill Road. So the span of being outside the city is the width of Foothill Road. It's about 60 feet. The creek in that area is pretty degraded. There have been agricultural operations on that property for at least since the 20s, and those operations have largely halted. There were different orchards there, most recently an avocado orchard, but all of the avocado trees have been removed. So now the property we purchased is mostly covered with non-native and invasive weeds. You have castor bean and fennel and and annual grasses. So the seeds from those are getting into the creek, moving down the creek, and kind of invading the rest of the creek area. So there are habitat restoration and creek restoration benefits. There are also water quality benefits that will come from that. So up in the upper part of this property, we have sampling data going back several years. It's one of our highest concentrations of indicator bacteria coming from in the upper watershed there, and that water is coming down and into the city and ultimately discharging into the ocean at Arroyo Beach or Henry's Beach. By providing the shade, there will be more water available. It's interesting, up at the upper part of the property, there's water year-round that's coming from groundwater, from springs, and it disappears when you get into the totally exposed section of the property. So we may have more water flow available, and we'll have uptake of those nutrients and bacteria through plants that'll help clean the water.
Just one other. Is this mainly canyon without a lot of flat land?
Much of the property is pretty steep. So, however, there were 2 building envelopes that the county had identified, and so the property was being marketed as development potential for residential development. So there are a couple of flat areas, but it's mostly sloped.
So possibilities of recreational uses?
I think it's difficult. The access is difficult. Parking is difficult. Right now, the access comes off a very steep driveway right off Foothill Road, where you kind of have to pull off and get off the road, try to get the gate open, then you drop down a very steep area, and there's really no parking. So at this point, we're looking at sort of guided access onto the property.
Reserve.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Uribe?
I have a procedural question, and that is, can we approve whatever we're looking at, the amended budget for the Creeks part without the Creeks Advisory Committee having seen it? And if they have changes, would we then look at it again, or how's that?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Uribe, it is very unusual to not have the recommendation from the advisory committee before it comes to the commission. So this is an unusual situation, which is why I asked Mr. Benson to share with you the general consensus of their subcommittee. You could probably go a couple of different ways. You could probably, with your general comments, indicate your, if you had any concerns or general support for the Creeks Fund budget. You could, when they complete their meeting tonight and they have their formal notification, you could authorize the chair to take your comments and to present that written support to the council. The only other option, and this would actually, you could do as a formal action, you could delay your comments on the Creeks Fund budget until your May meeting. It will be after the council meeting, but you will also have the opportunity to be present at our council budget presentation and speak to any concerns that might be raised by the Creeks Advisory Committee. And then once you do take a formal action on the Creeks budget, we can forward that to the council, because your May meeting will be prior to the council taking action on the budget. It just will be after our department presentation. So it is a little awkward. And alternatively, the commission could have a special meeting, depending on what you get from the Creeks Advisory Committee, and if you want to, in fact, have more of a discussion and have a special meeting just to come to resolution and a recommendation on the Creeks Fund budget, you could do that prior to our May 19th meeting. So you have a number of ways to address it. We're not getting any indications that there are issues or concerns. That can always happen, but we're not getting any of those indications. So you do have some options, and it is a bit awkward, and it's just sometimes this is how it happens with timing.
Yeah,
when the budget gets released, your commission meeting is one of the first on the budget, and it's the next day after the budget has been released from council. So
I'm more comfortable. If this were the first year of a 2-year cycle, I would be uncomfortable. And I think your point is well taken. But since it is the second year and it's really, looking at projections and modifying things, and we do have the subcommittees, their comments. I guess personally, I'm fairly comfortable with the commission taking action on the Creeks budget this evening, because it gets logistically, the schedule is, it's going to get too compressed. But
Commissioner Wiscombe and Uribe, the other thing is that often we do have the chair, if there are particular concerns that an advisory committee raises, we always invite them to come to the council budget presentation and speak to their issues or concerns in their recommendation, and we would have commissioners there at the same time. So it's a little awkward.
Okay. Are there other comments? I actually have no one has anything else. I have a couple things. Mr. Benson, can you just go into the lower Arroyo Burro restoration project a little bit? And I know there's, I think, $300,000 allocated to that.
Yes, Madam Chair, a couple things. One is just to step back a little bit. The way we fund our projects, we get into a project, the ultimate cost of that project may be $1 million, $1.5 million. And so one of the things we do is we we allocate funds to a project over a period of time so that when we actually get to construction time, we've got the funding available, or we've got grant match funding available. So the money is used for planning, outreach, design, permitting, and ultimately construction. With Lower Arroyo Borough, we've defined a couple of potential locations for that project, but we're at an early stage of our work on that project. One of the potential locations is a property that we bought not too long ago that's on the corner of Cliff Drive and Las Positas right there. It's about 1.5 acre property right at the corner. So that's a potential site for the use of those funds. The city also owns a 6-acre parcel a little bit further up the creek, and that's been identified as a potential location for that project to go as well. So we're just at an early stage, and we're starting to set aside the funding so that we can move forward with that project.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for describing that. I figured that was the case. Okay, and then just a little bit on your clean water business program. Your projected goal is to recruit 20 additional businesses per annum. And I guess my question is, is it limited to 20 because of staff limits? Are there more businesses that would like to participate, but this is the max that you can take, or is that a lofty goal that you seek out with businesses?
Madam Chair, that's a number we're seeking that out. So it takes the staff time to make those contacts and to follow up on those contacts. So it's a good goal for us to set each year because it makes us get out and do that. And we are able to achieve it as long as we put the resources into achieving that. And that program has been building over years. We have close to 150 businesses participating in that program, all within the city. And so it's grown. And what we do is every couple of years we'll add a new industry that we will kind of target and start working in. So what we find is it does get a little bit more difficult over time to find businesses in the industries that we have, and so we keep kind of growing the program that way, but focusing our staff efforts on one industry at a time.
Okay, thank you. That answered that. And I just had a couple comments. Congratulations on your cleanup and enforcement responses. You obviously exceeded your goals. And I was wondering about the Arundo, because the goal was so much less than what you actually did or what you're projected to do in FY 2014. So what you're saying, it's because you're working with the Ag Commissioner and they have the grant, and that's what's allowed you to. It's like almost a 700% increase over what was proposed. So.
Well, that's a challenge in terms of our planning and permitting, and then actually getting into a site. Some of the sites for the Arundo removal are remote and very difficult to access, difficult to remove Arundo from certain sites, and then some are large. So what we had in the last year, where we removed almost 1 acre of Arundo, was very dense, thick stands, but a big stand together. And so we're able to get a crew in there, and they're able to remove big areas. In the past, we were removing all of the Arundo from upstream, but it was in smaller stands. And so we'd have to get there, access that, and remove it. But we only got credit for, say, 500 square feet, and we had to do 10 of those instead of a big area at once.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, and my excuse me. My only other comment is you had from what was in the proposed budget for FY 2014, you had a much bigger increase, and that was in your social media followers. So I think that's a real testimony to the fact that people are looking at creeks and clean water and pollution and keeping our beaches clean and everything, and your increase there was over 200% over what was in the proposed, or is proposed, expected to be over 200%. We're not done with FY14 yet, but at any rate, so congratulations for that. I think that's really great. And that's all the comments I have. And we're to look at the operating fund, the capital fund, and fee changes, which we don't have in this budget. So, Ms. Longstreet?
I would move that we recommend the Creek's operating and capital budget for 2015, right? Do I have the correct?
Yes.
This always throws me on this year.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. And any other discussion, Mr. Casebeer?
Is this going to be subject to approval of your Creeks Committee?
Well, does the maker of the motion want to consider that?
Sure.
And
Then we're tied together.
And then the seconder? Okay. So it's subject to the approval of the Creeks Advisory Committee. Okay, so we have a motion.
If I could
Yes.
just make a slight word adjustment. The Creeks Committee would be making a recommendation,
yes.
so it'd be recommendation of
Right.
approval.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Benson. Okay. And we're moving on to golf.
So doing his first budget presentation is our business analyst for the department and for the golf fund, Mark Sewell.
Welcome, Mr. Sewell.
Thank you and good afternoon, Commissioners. I'd like to just wish you a very warm St. George's Day. You can probably tell from, I don't have to actually hold it anymore, you can probably tell from my accent that I'm not really a local, but there you go anyway. St. George is the patron saint of England and very proud day for me. Thank you. After that, I'd like to just start with the Golf Fund and just give you a little bit of background around the golf course. We are actually, this year, doing pretty well in comparison to prior years, with our rounds and revenue both far in excess of prior years. And that's contributed by two factors, I think. One is that we've had a really, really warm winter, and that has brought many golfers out to come and play. And the second is that there was actually the closure of the Ocean Meadows golf course recently, which has then meant a bit more play on our golf course. So the background is that the golf course is doing pretty well versus the last few years. However, we do have some significant challenges with regards to the budget in FY14 and then going forward with what we're recommending for FY15. So if I just show you the chart, the table up there right now, what you can see is that much of our cost base is in our salaries and benefits, and we are actually recommending for FY15 a slight increase with regards to what was originally presented. And that's for two main reasons. One is that there is half of the cost of a business analyst, within that plan for FY15, and the other part is that we are actually increasing the number of hourly hours that we have to be able to maintain the golf course. Okay. The other one, which we'll go on to in a little bit more detail later in the presentation, with regards to water. It's a pretty hot topic. You can see that we are projecting to finish FY14 with $251,000 spent on watering the course. Originally, we'd planned to spend $177 in FY15, so we've had to rebase our expectations on how much water will cost us, and I'll go into a bit more detail later on that. And then we're trying to balance those two increases in costs by looking to save costs elsewhere. And in the main, we can do it in supplies and services because we are reducing the amount of maintenance we need to spend. We've very recently bought some new turf equipment, so we have some new lawn mowing equipment, which doesn't need as much maintenance as was previously recommended. And then that transfer outline there of $57,600, That's actually a line where we were looking to build some reserves for future capital purchases. However, we feel that if we do that as we suggested we would, all we're really going to be doing is having to dip into our reserves to put money back into our reserves. So it feels a little bit of a false economy to do that. And then, so that gives us our total operating 1.98 million. And then you can see that the capital actually we're looking to increase from 77 to 110. There's a slide on that later on, but what I will just say is that that's split into two main projects. One is we've got some golf course infrastructure projects which we will be looking to put in place. We're going to be prioritising irrigation improvements. There are some things that we can do which will make us more efficient with regards to our use of potable water. Definitely our main priority. And then 60,000 of that 110,000 is actually where we account for the Players Improvement Fund, which was something which came in new in FY14. $1 from every paid round accrues to the Players Improvement Fund, and we try to get as many opinions as we can from our playing public, and they go to the Golf Advisory Committee, and then we discuss what projects we would like to do. So, you know, we're not trying to cut everything. We're trying to still invest in the right areas on the golf course. Okay, so the key expenditure changes I mentioned, the payroll costs, the maintenance repair, and the water. So I think it's probably time to talk about the water because it's, as I say, one of our main concerns. We've increased the budget significantly to 258,000, I think it is. And that's in recognition of mainly the price of water. So the golf course, in case anyone isn't aware, buys its water from the city water department in the same way that any other organisation does. There's no differential in terms of any price of water that the golf course pays. And what we've seen is a third year of dry conditions, which puts pressure on how much watering we need to do. We are in a stage 1 drought, and we're doing everything we can to try and save water, and we are actually saving water. However, the increased pricing has hit us in two places. We've had a 9% increase both in recycled and potable water. And then what's compounded the potable water is the tier system that was put in place based on irrigation areas. So just for information, we use potable water to irrigate our greens, and then we use recycled water in the fairways. The greens wouldn't last if we tried to use recycled water. And so the impact of that pricing and the impact of the drought has put real pressure on how much water we need to use. So with regards to that, we are investigating what we can do with regards to our irrigation infrastructure. Have we got the plumbing in the right places, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So this is the pie chart which just demonstrates how much water we use in comparison to potable and recycled. So you can see there by far the majority of it, 88% of how much water we use is actually recycled. And then 10% is used on the greens, and then the 2% for the restaurants and restrooms. Okay? This little chart here, I very much like charts, so I apologise for how many you're going to see. This little chart here, I think, shows pretty well where we were at mid-year, and the same is happening in the last few months, is you can see the first column, the volume, we're actually down in consumption year on year on recycled and potable water. So we've had drier conditions and we're using less water. However, what you can see on the next bar on the price per unit is we are seeing a 9% increase in recycled, and the impact of the tier allocation system has driven our average price per unit of potable water up 84%. Okay? And that then has the impact of 66% more dollars being spent on potable water and 3% more dollars spent on recycled water. So then, we've got all those costs. What are we doing with regards to revenues? Well, revenues, as I said right at the start, have been pretty strong. We are 15% up in revenue in FY14 after 9 months versus the same time period in FY13. That's, you know, to do with the fact there was a $2 price increase last year, plus we've had the extra play, as I mentioned. So what we're proposing is a $1 fee increase for everyone except juniors and tournaments and the rewards card. We want to protect junior golf. We also want to make our rewards card competitive. However, that fee increase has been decided to be delayed until January 2015. So typically they would be looking to go up in July, but we're looking to go up in January because we want to see how the drought in stage 2, all those kind of things will affect our play. We desperately don't want to provide golfers with more bad news. So that's what we felt with. So that's the $30,000. That's what accounts for that. The players' course improvement just reflects how many rounds we're having, $1 per round. And then the concession line there, you'll see that that's actually a reduction in revenue. That's a reflection of the new contract that was agreed in November 2013 with our pro shop. We renegotiated the terms, and therefore we are expecting slightly less revenue in FY15 than was originally proposed. Okay, thank you. So there we go. The green fees in terms of the fees and resolutions, $1 on everything with the exception of juniors, tournaments and rewards cards. Delayed it until January the 1st, and that enables us to bring in the balanced budget. So we are looking to actually maintain our reserves at the level they will finish this year. The capital, as I mentioned, golf course infrastructure, we will have new $50,000 next year to put with anything that we can use this year in terms of primarily the golf course irrigation infrastructure. And the Players Improvement Fund is expected to bring in another $60,000 next year for projects that any golfer can recommend to the Golf Advisory Committee, who can then decide whether we want to go forward with it. The main success story, and I think it is a success story, I think a lot of people are getting behind the opportunity to have a say about what happens at their golf course. It is their golf course. Is that we opened in January the new tee boxes. We did 5 new holes. Sorry, 5 new tee boxes, and they were opened on January the 4th, and they were an immediate and tangible improvement to the golf course for the golfers. And that's really the only criteria that we have with regards to the Players Improvement Fund. It must improve the experience for the golfers. And then with regards to the performance measures, we've actually made a couple of changes here. One of them seemed pretty obvious in terms of how much of an impact water was on our course, where we decided we need to actually demonstrate how much recycled and how much potable water we are going to be using, and look at all of the efforts that we can do there. And then secondly, we've just tweaked the IPM measures so that we are really focusing on the red categorized items, the ones which really make the difference. And so that's what we've proposed. The key initiatives, I've talked about it quite a lot in my presentation. Hopefully it's coming across how serious we are about the water impact on the golf course. It's not just as simple, I'm afraid, as turning the water off, because that tends to put the golfers off. So we need to try and find the right balance between, taking the lead and demonstrating that we are very serious about water conservation, and also protecting particularly our greens, because they are the primary asset on the golf course. To do that, we are looking to increase our efficiency and reduce the amount of potable water that we use in our mix. Hopefully, when I present future budgets, I'll be able to show you a pie chart with even less potable water as a percentage. We are looking to review and recommend new point of sale and booking systems so that we can actually engage our golfers better than we currently do. There are things out there in the marketplace which we could look to use, and that will hopefully happen within this new year. The Players Improvement Fund hopefully will go from strength to strength. So again, if anyone has any ideas, please make sure you are speaking with the guys in the pro shop, or send me an email. I'm very happy to hear it. And then finally, we're looking to actually develop the annual strategic marketing plan. We really want to hear what our golfers value and make sure we are responding to that, and make sure we are doing the best we can as their community golf course. What I can say, thankfully, is that at the regular meeting of the GAC in April, we got a recommendation to approve the budget. What I would say is there was a majority decision to accept the fee resolution to delay the fee increase of $1 to January. There was some discussion about putting it in January in July straight away. However, it was a majority decision to go with the staff's recommendation and delay until January, pending seeing how the drought would work. So I think that's it, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. Appreciate it. It was very nicely done. Very nicely done. Okay, I will open it up to the commission for comments, questions, discussion. Mr. Casebeer?
Yes, Mr. Sewell. Do you expect a Bubba bounce in this next year's rounds?
Commissioner Casebeer, I'm not sure I expect Bubba Watson's Masters victory will have too much of an impact on the round volume. Fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way you look at it from a European point of view, Americans win a lot of major tournaments. So although he is obviously quite a popular player, I think really the round volume, to sort of answer your question in more broad terms, which I think is probably where you're looking to go, we're not expecting too much change in terms of how many golf rounds are going to be played. We've seen that we've recovered over the last couple of years, but we're still way, way behind the peak of rounds on our golf course. So we're projecting 64,000 total rounds, of which about 60,500 will be paid rounds. I think at the peak we kind of got close to, if not over, 100,000 rounds. So yeah, and I think that's, we've been lucky with the weather, which has helped us in comparison to some of the golf courses on the East Coast, certainly. But golf in general across the country isn't in massive growth or massive decline at the moment.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? Or okay, I have a couple things. I think that delaying the increase in fees till I forgot to mention I was at the GAC meeting but didn't hear the whole budget presentation, but and missed that discussion. But I think delaying the increase in fees till January 2015 is an excellent idea. I think it's really the way to go. Golf is has its challenges right now as an industry, and our course has its challenges, as do other courses, and I just think that things need to settle down a little bit before we add more money to that. So I also support if I'm understanding this correctly, I support the delay in the equipment purchase of, I think it was $57,600 to help offset water costs. Is that correct? That's what we're delaying, and I hate to delay equipment purchases out on the golf course, but I think that's the really proactive approach to take, and I gather that's what this is all about.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, for those of you that were on the commission last year, part of our golf budget was that we negotiated a loan to replace most of our large turf equipment at one time. And so our turf equipment is actually in good shape. And this $57,000 was our commitment at that time to start rebuilding our reserves for future equipment purchases. And when Mr. Sewell mentioned that we'd be investing in our reserves, but then having to draw down our reserves, that's what he was referring to. It just didn't make sense. So we are just going to use that 57 towards our operational needs at this time.
Great. Okay. Great. Thank you for the clarification on that. And I'd like to just commend Simone, who's here. Nice job on the maintenance costs per round, given the drought. That the report was really well, and there's a lot of challenges with the golf course right now, and I think that you've really done a great job keeping the maintenance costs per round down. And the green fees and concession revenue per round are both higher than the adopted goals, so nice job there for the golf course. I'm think given the challenges that the course has, that the staff that's working on it is doing a remarkable job and is very proactive. So that's how I feel. This budget is operating fund, capital fund, and fee changes. So that's what we need to make a recommendation to City Council on those three things. Do I hear a motion? Ms. Longstreet?
Sure. I recommend that we recommend to Council the golf budget for 2015, including operating capital and fees and charges.
Great. Okay, and I hear a second? I think Ms. Uribe actually seconded it. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Great. Okay. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sewell. You did a great job.
Thank you very much.
And happy St. George's Day. Okay. So now we're moving on to general fund.
Okay, Chair Wiscombe, members of the Commission, Jill Zachary, here to present a portion of the general fund along with Ms. Rapp. I'll do some overview and focus on administration and the Parks Division first. Just as a reminder, you know, throughout our city, we have almost 1,800 acres of parkland, 47 parks, 11 sports facilities, 15 community buildings, miles of public beach. We're a very fortunate city. We have many trees, public trees, and the department as a whole is responsible for almost half of all the general fund facilities. So when you look at our budget and what we do and how we touch the lives of Santa Barbarans and visitors, this gives you a sense of the broad reach that we have. When you look at our programs and services, as you know, we're very active in the community and we're able to reach and work with so many different segments, whether it's youth, children and after-school programs, people that enjoy our parks and our facilities through our reservation system, community events, 118, if you think about it. That's enormous for a community our size. And we also are actively engaged in food distribution programs and providing direct services to people in neighborhoods. Our general fund portion of our department is separated into 3 divisions: the administration, parks, and recreation. Administration comprises about 7% of the budget, parks 50%, and recreation 43%. The proposed recommended budget for FY15 is just over $15 million. And when you look at how that's changed from the original plan and what we're projecting for this year, you'll see that there's an increase of about $800,000 from last year's original plan. The table illustrates how that breaks out across divisions, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail, with the largest increase in the Parks Division, in part largely due to a new program that we'll discuss, and it was also in your staff report, salary and benefits, and then other programming changes in the Recreation Division. Looking specifically at the Administration Division, the largest increase is in salary and benefits, and that's the other 0.5 of the business analyst. Business analyst does work half-time on general fund, budget-related, and analytical-related programs. It's something that, as the Commission knows, we have needed for a very long time, and so is adding great service throughout our department, both general fund and the Gulf Fund. We also, this year, if the Commission recalls, we proposed and Council approved a new position in the project management team, and that is a park project technician in FY14. We actually upgraded that to a planner position this year and are in the process of completing that recruitment. The upgrade of the position is largely due to the fact that our capital program has grown enormously, and we have some very complex projects, including the Cabrillo Pavilion and bathhouse renovation, that requires a level of planning ability that we hadn't anticipated initially. And then also we have some new funding. The Commission has voiced over the years, along with staff and members of the public, our need to invest more in developing a park volunteer program, and so part of the recommended budget includes $25,000, and really that will go to support hourly staff and special projects. We've done some groundwork over the years. As we've gone along, we have some very successful projects that we do, and those will continue. This will hopefully take us to the next level and move that forward. Key initiatives for the administration division. It's largely the administration program, but also the project management program is developing our strategic drought plan. The Commission will hear more about that over the next couple of months. I mentioned expanding the park volunteer program. We have a number of capital projects that are underway and will As the Commission knows, the Urban Forest Management Plan was adopted by Council. There are many things in the plan that really are enhanced services, but there are also things in the plan that we can do with existing resources, and so we have existing staff that will be doing that. We have other projects, education projects, and then also our Front Country Trails program has regained ground and will be moving forward more significantly in the next fiscal year. When we look at the Parks Division, as you can see, the increase in the Parks Division budget from the original plan to the recommended plan is focused on salaries and benefits, supplies and services, and some allocated cost increases. So that brings the total budget to about $7.6 million. There are some minor changes within our existing programs. It's really just things moving around. So the focus of today's presentation is really on the new funding. And there's two areas of new funding, medians and parkways, and then also our water budget increase, and a focus on that first. And actually that affects the entire general fund. It also affects the Recreation Division. The $84,000 is specific to the Parks Division. We face similar issues that the Golf Fund faces in terms of the fact that we are in the third year of drought conditions, dry conditions. Our water use has increased, and we're also subject to similar changes in the tier structure and the cost per unit of water over time. While we are going to be looking at using less water, we're in stage 1 drought. We anticipate going into stage 2 drought in May, which will increase the amount of reductions. The cost of water will increase, so we may not actually save money. It'll still cost money, even though we're watering less than we were. In the Parks and Recreation Divisions, we do also have a breakout between what is potable and what's recycled. And as you can see, majority of the water that's delivered is delivered through the purple pipes. When you see the little purple insignia in a park or a facility, that indicates that it is the recycled water. Potable water, as you can imagine, is used in our facilities, whether it's drinking water, tap water, shower water, that kind of thing. The challenges, as Mr. Sewell mentioned, that we also face is that our need for water has increased. So this chart shows our actual use, our consumption of water from fiscal year 2009 to where we are today, at least projected in FY 2014, and the fact that we anticipate that we'll maintain that water use as we go into FY 15. Now with the stage 2 drought, that may change slightly, but this is what we put in for our budget. So it shows you that we've increased over the last 3 years, over these other years, and then subsequently, similar to the Gulf Fund, the cost has increased. Our volume, our usage, is up 12% in potable water, 1% in recycled, but then you can see the corresponding price increase. And then this shows overall, over those years, the total increase. And again, that's partly due, mostly due to the tier structure that was implemented from FY 13 into 14. I would add that we were very, very sensitized to this issue before the city declared a stage 1 drought. As we were looking at our first quarter and our second quarter expenditures, we realized, our staff realized, the managers of these programs and facilities, that our water costs were skyrocketing and already began to try to figure out why that was occurring. And behind these bar charts and pie charts is an extensive amount of data that was mined from the water department through the work of Mr. Sewell to really, we're getting down to meter by meter, month by month. What is it that we're using and why, and trying to analyze how we change the way we use water, and that also make sure that the way our water allotment has been determined is accurately meeting the needs of each facility, because that's the focus of our efforts. It's not just what's happening, but how do we better manage it and move forward so we're still able to provide the programs and the services and the facilities to the best of our ability, particularly under dry conditions. So The key budget change is actually a new program. As the Commission is aware, historically, Parks Division has been responsible for maintaining certain parkways and medians throughout the city, and so has the Streets Division. Over the years, there's been a lot of discussion of how to improve the service, and then also, in particular, focus on our gateway medians. So as you enter the city, what do you see? Because those are the image that our visitors have, and then also that our residents have. So with this new fiscal year, it's determined that everything related to median and parkway maintenance should be consolidated within the Parks Division and the Parks and Recreation Department. So we will be taking over management of parkways that are currently under the responsibility of the Public Works Department. This represents over 600,000 square feet of public parkway and medians. It's both islands, it's bulb outs, it's parkways, and they're scattered throughout the city. And a certain amount of new funding is being proposed, $383,000. The bulk of that funding, if you remember back to the earlier Parks Division side, is for contracts. But it also will support the addition of a park supervisor to oversee it. When we looked at taking on this, we determined the most efficient and effective way was to create a new program and then to consolidate other things that we do in other Parks Division programs so that, for example, the Downtown Organization State Street maintenance contract is now in this program. It got taken out of another one. We also manage the Sheffield Open Space, which is water resources land, putting it in this program. So when you actually look at the total program budget, it's almost a $1.2 million program. But the new funding into that program is just under $400,000 because we moved funding from other ones. New funding includes just over $300,000 in general fund, a one-time of $30,000 for startup costs that need a vehicle, need certain things that are a one-time cost. There's a transfer, an increase in the UUT funding for medians and maintenance that will be coming into this budget. And then the new funding will cover 0.4 FTE of a new park supervisor, 2,000 hours of hourly staff, and then, as I mentioned earlier, the bulk of the funding is for contracting, and the contracting will be focused on those gateway medians.